carrots, fake fruit, fake grapefruits, fake liar, you liar.
Well, hey, welcome back to Sunday Night Live. It is the zoo, folks. It is the zoo, and you want to talk about a zoo. Open your door, poke your head out, and just look around and start listening to what's happening, right? You bet. We're kicking the week off, not on Monday morning, but we as preppers, we're thinking ahead. We come out way ahead of everyone else, and we look around. We see what's happening, and we are prepared. So we start our week on Sunday night. And I tell you, it is incredible what is going on. I'm broadcasting live from Uman's garage. He let me out of the basement. He let me out of the bunker, right? I'm out more now than Joe Biden gets out of his basement. All joking aside, Biden does spend way too much time in Delaware in his basement. I mean, isn't he supposed to be the president of the United States of America? Unfreaking believable. I hope you brought your beverage. I brought mine. And I got another cold one down here. And behind me, as you can see, Uman was kind enough to put out some John juice. So I've got a wide variety of alcoholic beverages because I need it. This weekend, I had some good times, some relaxing. Got a couple April Fool's joke in, but it's back to it. I got texts from my good friend, Dr. John. I hope you're doing good and you're live with us, Dr. John. I got Dr. Tim. We got all kinds of doctors, folks. We got the doctors of democracy, the doctors of doom. And over on the other side, our political and philosophical opponents are, let's see, Dr. Doom, Dr. Dumbass, Dr. Oh, there's too many of them. Anyways, this is your show. This is your show on Sunday night. We've got YouTube here. We've got Patreon here. Everyone come together live. If you want to get your question answered, if you got a question, you got a statement, you got a topic, you got a person, a place, a thing, you got a joke, or if you want to do the Stump the John, right? Tell one lie, tell one truth in your comment. And I have to decide which one is the truth, right? But you can, I could say something like, the president of Ukraine is a flamer who has been on TV, appeared as an actor, and then became president, or the president of Ukraine is an honorable patriot who loves his country. Which one sounds more like BS? Well, the part about him being a flaming actor who played the president of Ukraine on TV. Well, that's actually the truth. The part about him being honest and caring about his country is the lie, because there would be no more conflict if he would have, one, lived up to his promises with Russia, and two, hadn't antagonized Russia and threatened Russia. And if Zelensky would just surrender and come to the peace table and stop playing games. And we'll get into the games he's playing over the weekend, folks. But if he would just surrender, there'd be no more problems for the people. But for the most part, folks, the Russians aren't messing with the people of Ukraine, despite what all the propagandists would tell you and have you believe that Putin's out there personally cutting the livers out of Ukrainian people and eating them raw. Not true, right? In fact, I believe it's the Ukraine military, the Azov battalion, the actual Nazis, folks. The Nazis of the Ukraine are accused of, by many, many, many people, of committing war atrocities, well, against the Ukrainians themselves. And Zelensky had something to say about that. I'll get to that here in a little bit, but this is, like I said, your turn. If you want to talk, if you have topics, statements, who, how, when, what, why, whatever you want to talk about, you hit that super chat button right up here, super chat. That's how I make you famous. You hit that super chat button, folks, right? Make a donation, which goes to the GTFB and SB, and make sure I've got plenty to drink and plenty of spam in my pantry in the bunker, because we have SHTF coming, folks, and it's just incredible what is going on. But your super chat donations keep me right here in front of this camera, talking to everybody, watching what's going on, and bringing you opinion that's believable. And if it's not believable, at least it makes some freaking sense, because the mainstream media doesn't make sense. Bill Maher, right? Liberal socialist extraordinaire who has his own satire on HBO. I don't know who has more viewers live, me or him. He has a live studio audience. I guess I could have that if I let the guys back in, but I locked them out. Anyways, Bill Maher says, because you won't report the news, like on Hunter Biden and his laptop, and you've been hiding it, the people just don't trust you, mainstream media. And he's absolutely right. Bill Maher, for some reason, keeps telling some truths and letting the left wing know, this is why you're losing the world, you dummies. And they're losing the world bigger and bigger. So let's do this, right? I want to make you famous. So get your super chat donations in. It's that button right up there. and we'll get going. And we're back, and right out the gate, Darcy T checks in with a $50 PayPal super chat donation. Always a great start to the show to hear from Darcy. And this is what she says. Good evening, John. Why do I get the distinct feeling that they are about to drop another crisis? Maybe because the most recent one is already getting threadbare. Smiley face. Thank you, Darcy, again, for the great support you show this channel. I know that I appreciate it. Jolene appreciates it. Everyone appreciates it because we keep coming out with hardcore stuff. Now, a distinct feeling they're about to drop another crisis because the most recent one is getting threadbare. Now, threadbare indeed. So what are they doing to spice it up? Well, we had more explosions in Russia on the Russian side of the border. And at the end of last week, we had the Ukraine forces claim credit for an explosion in Russia at a fuel depot. Yeah, they need to spice it up because the Ukraine thing, it ain't doing what they said it was going to do. First, they said Putin was going to attack, invade. It didn't happen for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then finally he did, but not for the reasons they said. They tried spicing it up with, oh my God, a nuclear power plant is on fire. And they tried spicing it up with a Ukraine lying bureaucrat who said it was going to be 10 times worse than Chernobyl, as if anyone really understands how devastating Chernobyl was. They just know that people died and some shit blew up. They can't remember that. The people of the world can't remember that. They're lucky if they remember even what Chernobyl is about. Most people thought it was in Russia. It was in Ukraine. Anyways, let us continue. Spicing it up. Oh, they're trying to spice it up. In the same time, they're like, we're not going to win. We're not going to win. How do we try and make this a win? They're trying to make this a win for for Biden. They're trying to make it a win for NATO, for the European Union. They're trying to find a way to spin this as a win, to try and make it look like Putin loses, and they're having a heck of a time doing it. So what else have they got in their thing, Darcy? What else have they got in their magic box of shitty tricks? Well, let's see. They've got Cerveza bug. They're trying to gin up some support for that. And then they've got, and this is the big one. This is where I think we will be going. When they get all of the mileage they can out of Ukraine, when Ukraine, and rather its, shall we say, petulant child leader, Zelensky, when they finally get him to surrender 100%, they're going to have to go to a cyber attack. I think that'll be their next thing. Because, what's happening in Ukraine is bullshit, and people either suck up and buy it or they just don't believe it. There's two camps, folks. It's not like Putin is as bad as Hitler or Putin is worse than Hitler. There's not those two belief systems. It's Putin is a bad guy, or really, what is Putin doing that's so bad? That's the two opinions. It's a yes or no, not a yes or no, hell yes, for Putin is the evil bastard of the century. So they're going to have to change the narrative, change the fear. Uman likes to call it the 72-hour news cycle. They're going to need something new to focus on every 72 hours to keep the attention and to keep the fear going. Great topic to start with, because we're going to keep rolling into more of this. Get your super chat donations in, and pow, right off the bat, number 2 following Darcy is EB with a $10 super chat donation. And he says, I've been starting to notice subtle memory, cognition, that's a memory thinking, changes in people around me who took the Jim Jones juice. Have you noticed this as well? Have others been noticing this, I wonder? I have noticed many things, EB. In general, I've noticed that people, they're not quite on it. We had the very public figure of Bruce Willis, famous actor, action hero in the film. He, for one of the super rare disorders that comes from the Jim Jones juice, he's got it. What an interesting coincidence, right? Always a very sharp, funny, talented actor. Now all of a sudden he's going, woohoo, can't think right. I have noticed that people who take the the Jim Jones juice, JJJ, they seem to have what? In my opinion, there's an awful lot of anger. Now, you could say, John, you're angry. You're a right-wing, angry Republican type of guy. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm actually very calm and reserved and kind of a thinking man. And I'm just as analytical as I've always been. Thank you very much. But, I get to come on here and show you guys, just how pissed off I can get. But I'm not really pissed off. However, these leftists are. They're so angry. They're saying shit like, we want you people to die. They're blaming everyone. So, I'm going to agree with you, EB. There's something going on. Now, if you get dementia, which means you're losing your frickin' marbles, right? You're becoming a dotard is another term for it. Dementia is a word for it. Losing your frickin' marbles. And people with dementia, like Dementia Joe in the White House, they become angry. Once again, anger. Now, anger can be caused by frustration. Frustration happens when you don't understand things. You don't get it. You don't see what's going on. Anger and frustration can also come through fear. I think a lot of people who've taken the Jim Jones juice, I think they know there's something wrong inside their system. Their brain, their heart, their blood pressure, their energy, their excitement level, everything is just, there's stuff not quite right, not feeling quite good. If you want to play high school sports and you got the Jim Jones juice, you now have to go get an EKG. What? That's right. A lot of schools are saying you got to get an EKG. You have to make sure your heart checks out before we let you as a child run around on a basketball court, because we can't have more kids keeling over. So how much you want to bet kids are going to the doctor to have their hearts checked out? We used to get physicals. Just to play Little League Baseball, you have to go do the old hold your scrotum and turn your head and cough thing, right? Doctor would check you out and make sure you're physically capable of running around like a child. Now, how many kids are being told, sorry, you have an abnormal EKG. We're not going to sign off on this. You cannot any longer play sports. Makes me wonder, folks. Makes me wonder. We're up over 400 people live in the first 15 minutes of the show. This is absolutely great. We've kicked the ever-loving stuffing out of President Biden once again. This guy can't manage to get 500 people and more than 20 thumbs up in 5 minutes, 15 minutes. No one cares. The only people that go to watch his stuff on YouTube is just a thumbs down it practically and move on. They can't even lie. I mean, why don't they just pay $100 to some firm over in, I don't know, pick a country, right? Indo Sri Lanka, and pay them to watch his shit and then give him thumbs up. They're so lazy, ignorant, and stupid, they won't even lie properly. About the only time they like to do that is, the month of November on even numbered years, if you get my drift. Wink, wink. Okay, let's do this. Let us get another super chat up on the board. If not, I'm going to tear into something that's going to scare the hell out of you. The super chats is your way to ask questions. Again, any topic, statement, subject, person, place, thing. Give me a pronoun or a question, and we go at it. And speaking of Sri Lanka, I just kind of made something up, the name of a country, kind of like, Kirplekistan. In Sri Lanka, the executive cabinet, that's kind of like Biden's administration. The Sri Lanka administration or cabinet, they offered resignation in Sri Lanka because they have out of control inflation, folks, and they're now getting widespread social unrest. Remember, we've talked about first world countries and then emerging market second world countries and then third world shitholes. Well, because we're a first world nation, the United States of America and Europe, right? We have problems, but we don't feel it the way the lower levels do. As we quit spending money, as we quit going on vacation, as we quit helping these little countries out, they go into inflation, they go into hard times way before us. But it's a great leading indicator of what's coming for us. So Bloomberg has reported that Sri Lanka's cabinet has submitted its resignation. This came from a ruling member of the party, right? And there's rising public anger over there because the government's economic policies have led to increase in living costs, and against the dollar and other foreign currencies, they're losing. Here's the quote. "We gave resignations to the prime minister, saying that we are willing to leave at any time." Right? After discussing with the president the steps to be taken, it will be decided. Folks, the dollar crashing is going to take other nations with it. You think, well, if the dollar crashes, that should make the Sri Lanka, whatever dollar they have, go up. Well, it's the dollars going down and what's holding up other countries. Right? They can't, they're all going down. They're all becoming worth less. Right? A lot of times we'll use the expression worthless, meaning zero. No, it's worth less. Right? The president's word is worth less. More and more all the time. It is just unbelievable. Now we got Heidi Carson checking in with a $10 PayPal super chat donation. And she says, restock that Scottish Water Semperfi. You bet. It is a little bit lower than normal. I'm going to have to look into that. Thank you for the great donation, Heidi. You keep on keeping on. Got to lubricate the gears, keep the mind running sharp. We got a lot of stuff happening, folks. We have money problems. We have Cerveza-bug. We have war. We have power. We have all kinds of issues that you and I have discussed for years. And we were told, you are crazy. You're out of touch. You're ridiculous because you believe you need to prep. You think there's something wrong with America. There's a lot wrong, folks. It ain't you and me. It's not the Constitution. It's the people who are in charge of it. Now, I want to tell you about the Netherlands. And I think Remy is in the comment section. We got 500 people live right now, folks. That is a huge amount for a Sunday night. It's a huge amount for YouTube, especially since they are not. I mean, I put out 3, folks, count them, 3 YouTube promo posts saying, hey, pay attention. We're going to be on tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And very few people got them. Uman, Kaz, Vaughn, they didn't get them. Other friends of mine said, I didn't get any notifications today about you and Sunday Night Live. Good thing I checked. It's like, yeah, good thing, man. Anyways, over in the Netherlands, inflation has spiked now that the government is admitting to 11.9%, basically 12%. The energy component of that same inflation is up 102%. I guess that's year-on-year figures. 102%. That's just what we're reporting over here on our energy, gasoline. It's doubled or more than doubled. A lot of places actually tripled, folks. But I mean, from where I'm at, it is more than doubled in the last year and a half. You know, in California, they went from what, $3.25 a year ago, and they're up over $7 in a lot of places. Yeah, it's double or better. It is absolutely incredible. And we've been talking about inflation. Now, if oil or gasoline has doubled, has it really doubled, or has the dollar lost its purchasing power and it has dropped? It's all perspective, right? We know that the difference has gone like this. So if you hold oil still, the dollar drops. If you hold the dollar still, oil rises. Any way you look at it, it's doubled, right? But has your salary doubled? I don't think you've probably gone from $15 to $30 an hour. I don't think you've gone, right, from 20 to 40 or 30 to 60. No, I doubt it. I'm sure you'll be lucky to get the standard, 2, 3, or 5% increase that companies like to give out as if they're Santa Claus and you should do a frickin' cartwheel for it. Right? The cost of living for people in the poor class and the middle class even, right? This is where inflation really comes home. Now, I'm going to talk, while we're on inflation, and maybe Rainey can chime in and let us know what's going on with inflation in the Netherlands from his chair. But in Germany, guess what? Starting tomorrow, the report is that German food stores, supermarkets, whatever they want to call them, retailers, they're going to increase food from 20 to 50%. Overnight, pow, you go in, all of a sudden, a gallon of milk is, instead of $2, it's $3. A can of Spam, instead of $2.50, is now $3. It's going to go, everything's going to go up 20 to 50%. Now, it doesn't sound like a big deal. Oh, John, it's $2.50 for a can, up to $3. Hey, what's 50 cents? Well, 50 cents is 20% of $2.50. People are like, well, what's $20 to you and me? You go to the store, you spend another $20. I tell you what, $20 is $20. You give me $20, and then you give the person next to you $20, and then everyone else $20, and see how that $20 starts to feel. Folks, imagine that $20. No. If my food bill were to go up only 20%, right? That's $50 a month for me. $50 a month. A family, right? A husband, a wife, a couple of kids, their food bill is probably $500, $600 a month. If that goes up 20%, folks, that's $150. Times that $150 by what? 100 million families in the United States. There's 1 billion people in Europe, folks. So 250 million families going up, $150 a month. That is a huge increase, right? It's the same thing as saying, well, in the United States, there's 100 million families here. There's 350 million people, but there's 100 million families. 100 million times 150, right? Their food bill going up 150. And that's just food. That's not counting gasoline. That's not counting clothes, shoes, other expenses. Everything is going up. Yeah, no, yeah. You want to talk about German efficiency? They're going up overnight. Pow, Monday it starts. That is what I call, that's not hyperinflation, folks. That's fast as fuck inflation. Is it not? Unbelievable what's going on. Are you prepared? Are you prepared for what's coming? Now, again, you have been called a wacko, reactionary, an extremist for wanting to be prepared, for wanting to have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. You've been called wacko for having a plan to deal with social problems, law enforcement problems outside your front door, your neighborhood, and your town. You've been called a wacko for that, right? How come we are wackos? How come? That's what they like to call us, right? You know, you want to hear wacko. In California, they passed a law requiring racial and LGBT, right, requirements for corporations to have their board members stacked full of these radical left-wing wacko socialist types who are, many of them, a bunch of perverted freaks. Well, interestingly, folks, the Supreme Court shot it down as unconstitutional, right? Required wokeness is unconstitutional. Now, can you imagine that 10 years ago, 20 years ago? No, it doesn't make any sense at all. It makes no sense at all for that to have been the case. Now it's almost expected. What stupidity is coming next? And they want to say you are unreasonable and you jump to conclusions and you are paranoid. Really? I'm paranoid because I'm paying attention to what's going on and seeing exactly how crazy the world is. Unbelievable. Get your super chat donations in, get your questions up on the board, and I'll make you famous. Yes, indeed, I will. I'm going to give the Horse's Ass Award away on tonight's show. The Horse's Ass Award. It's one of my favorite things, and I'm bringing it back because we got a lot of them out there. You know, we wouldn't have the problems we're having if what is going on in the world socially, politically, medically, militarily, geopolitically, if the mainstream media would just do their job, right, we wouldn't be having this problem. The people would understand right away. So this beautiful Horse's Ass Award goes to, specifically in this case, Fox News. That's right. For Fox News, they get the Horse's Ass Award. And I'll tell you why. They have earned it this week. Because they interviewed the Ukrainian president, Zelensky. Remember, the letter Z means you love Russia. Right? So no, President Zelensky. And they edited out something very, very important. They asked him about the Azov battalion atrocities that were committed and have been committed. And the president had a remarkable answer that nobody gets to hear. It will not make it out, has not made it out, and it should be the freaking headline. This is President Zelensky's response to his Nazi. The Azov battalion is a Nazi military battalion. He says, quote, "They are what they are," end quote. He didn't deny it. Number one, he did not deny that the Azov battalion has committed atrocities. Against who? Against their own people, against Russians who live in Ukraine, known as ethnic Russians. He said, quote, "They are what they are, these atrocities. I guess you could say, are they Nazis too? You just say they are what they are. Have they committed other crimes? Well, they've done what they've done, and they are what they are, and they that's what they do. That's an explanation. That serves as an explanation, folks. This is the son of perdition. This is the installed puppet leader under a Ukrainian oligarch, the CIA, the US military. They helped put this clown in 2014. And he has no better answer when asked about Azov battalion atrocities. Now, I find it fascinating that Fox News guy even bothered to ask about these literal Nazis in Ukraine. In fact, I've heard members of the mainstream media call the allegations false. I think I've seen the photos. Now, okay, I think of Photoshop stuff. Well, no, I think I've seen a lot of photos. I think I've seen a lot of tattoos. I'm pretty sure I even saw legislation passed by the United States Congress back in, 2017, 2018, saying the U.S. government will not fund or supply the Nazi battalions of Ukraine. That's how strongly, folks, the Democrats felt about it back then. That's how strongly the U.S. Congress felt about Nazis in Ukraine way back then. But now they're the good guys. So the horse's ass award goes to Fox, because rather than telling the American people that, they whitewashed it, right? They just sprinkled some pixie dust on it. It disappeared, absolutely disappeared, folks. Can you believe it? Well, yeah, hell yeah, I can. I mean, we all believe this now about the mainstream media. We can't get the truth out of them. Even when it's handed to them, a scoop. Imagine if Fox News was the one saying, hey, look, these people are a bunch of freaking Nazis. Look at this. Look at these pictures. Look at this report. Look at Zelensky. Look at his excuse. It's all bullshit. They could blow the whistle on this whole freaking thing. They haven't. They're complicit. They're a part of the problem, folks. And if you're a part of the problem, you're not part of the solution. Not part of the solution. So get your super chat donations in, hit that button. Tell me what's on your mind. Tell me what's pissing you off. Tell me what you think. Tell me what's bothering you about everything that's going on right now. Because there's a lot of people out here, folks. There's a lot of people in the world of prepping, in the world of patriotism, that are confused. They're waking up, and they need to hear from all of us. So we've got Running on Ripple with a $20 super chat donation. And he says this: eccentric billionaire Dan Pena has claimed for years that Putin had Bitcoin created. Could this have been another long-term plan to help circumvent SWIFT? He is toying also with accepting it for oil besides gold and the ruble. Thank you very much for that awesome super chat donation and the superb question. The question again is, did Putin create Bitcoin? Well, it's fascinating because we can't get a straight answer. We can't get a straight answer. And that's what's bothersome is supposedly the most important cryptocurrency of all. The granddaddy of this, right? Was it CIA? Was it a couple of kids in their garage? Was it some super smart nerd out of MIT or Caltech or something that created Bitcoin? Or was it Putin from behind the evil, old, tattered Russian curtain, pulling knobs and levers? And he came up with this idea to destabilize the US dollar, the currency system, the world reserve currency. It's quite fascinating. Now, I'm going to say, no, it wasn't Putin. But some people will probably claim that, Dan Pena and others, and continue to claim it. Putin wasn't necessary to destabilize the dollar. In fact, Putin did a lot to keep the dollar stable for a long, long time while Bitcoin was working. By buying T-bills, treasury bills, bonds, Putin, by buying those to get currency for Russia, was supporting the U.S. and the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. For years and years and years and years, Russia has done that. They quit doing that, and they've been selling their U.S. treasuries, their securities, which means they're de-dollarizing. But why would you invest in something like that, U.S. T-bills, when they promise you a return of 2%, but the government tells you that inflation is 12%? That's a net 10% loss. You want a government guarantee that is going to be a real guarantee, and it's a loss. So why should Putin do that, right? And many countries are de-dollarizing. Now, circumventing SWIFT, though, this is another topic altogether. Yeah, Putin is requiring unfriendly nations to use rubles to buy all products, right? That's where this is going. Gold, I think, can be taken in trade. Now, friendly countries, they can trade like rubles for rupees or rubles for Chinese yuan, but unfriendly nations have to buy the ruble or gold, but also Bitcoin. If there's anything in this, I think, and this is just my opinion, and it is wild speculation, is that Putin would say he accepts Bitcoins for oil. And the reason he would do this is to demonstrate, once again, for the masses that think it's anonymous, it's tax-free, it's cross-border, you can do what you want, you can't be stopped, you're hidden, you're secret. And he'll show that the U.S. government and the banking system have total control over Bitcoin, that it is not anonymous. They know who you are and they know what you're doing. Right? It's not tax-free because they see the transaction and they will tax you on it. And you can't cross borders. They can lock it down if they want. Now, there's been some significant efforts to keep it peer-to-peer rather than going through coin exchanges. Right? They've been trying, folks, to work around. I think what they're doing is testing their system. I really believe it is a government shall we say, a government crypto, but they want to see how it's used, what people are interested in using it for. They want to see how functional it is, how easy it is to use, right? How well it's accepted. There's a lot of beta testing in Bitcoin itself and its speculative value. But I think what Putin wants to show by claiming it is that, he's got loopholes that he can work and he can get value out of it. If he can get it for oil, he can trade it to someone else for something he needs. But once it crosses, into United States hands, and Bitcoin doesn't go through the SWIFT system, SWIFT being the international interbank debt settlement system. It's a Visa card, credit card for nations. I think he's going to show, one, its positive attributes, and two, its negative attributes, by accepting it and using it, and then listening to the United States government talk about how evil it is and how it needs to be stopped. So how can it be evil for Putin and good for the rest of the world? Right? Either Bitcoin is evil or Bitcoin is good, but it can't be both. Right? It can't be all things. And I think that's an important lesson for us all to learn. Is that why is Nazi and Nazi history and Nazi atrocity bad for Germany, 80 years ago, but it's good for Ukraine today? Unbelievable. In fact, I got this nice little story here. Where is it? There's so much that happened over the weekend. I would check in, I would write stuff. And I can't believe this. And I put it into I would put it into the setup for tonight. Right. So Dr. Malone, he is the gentleman who, along with others, invented mRNA modification technology, right? That's being used today now on people. And he wanted to talk and use his plain talk, right? To talk about global fascism and show the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, the Great Reset guy, the WEF, their agenda. So, how do experts and smart people describe the globalists and the World Economic Forum? And this is how Dr. Malone did, folks. You're going to get a little peek back at history and then look today, right? He said heavy-handed totalitarianism would be the word I would use. So let me comment on that a little bit. There's a quote that's attributed to the World War II Italian dictator, Italy's Nazi leader, Italy's Hitler was named Mussolini, Benito Mussolini. So he did say a couple of things about fascism, right? Benito Mussolini regarding this logic of public-private partnerships, the fusion between corporations and the government. He called it fascism, right? The originator of fascism explicitly said the same logic, that there should be an alliance, a partnership, a fusion between the interests of state and global governments and businesses. He actually suggested that a better term than fascism is corporatism. That's what the World Economic Forum, folks, attempts to advance is just that, a global corporatism. And they're not hiding it anymore, folks. They use different words and terms from time to time, but when you break it down to plain talk, plain language that you and I can use, words that can be easily understood, right? That's what it is. They're promoting global fascism. That's why it's okay, I guess, to support Nazis today, but they want to condemn them of World War II because of all the atrocities on top of all the theft, corruption, lying that was done by Benito Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany. These fascists, they tied corporate power to government power. And it was a very, very powerful union that benefited both. But when there's extreme power like that, it becomes, well, it's always abused. So look at all the atrocities that were committed by the Nazis with their concentration camps, where people were sent and worked as slaves and were killed either through starvation, execution, abuse, or just flat out murder to pull the gold out of their teeth. Literally, folks. No fancy words needed. That's what fascists did back in the 1930s and the 1940s. Here we are almost 100 years later, and now we're supposed to just ignore Ukraine fascists, right? The atrocities committed by the Azov battalion. And their leader, Zelensky, wants to say, it just is what it is, right? They are what they are. They have done what they have done, and we don't need to worry about it anymore, folks. Corporatism is fascism, and the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, right? Without a front man this time. They don't have their Hitler, but they are prescribing the same deaths and the same destruction of their enemies, right? In this Fourth Reich. Doubt me not. Or no, better yet, doubt me and look into it. Truly look into what Hitler and Mussolini were. It is incredible. And you want to say there's no reason to prep? Not you guys, of course, the rest of the planet, right? Unbelievable where these people in their heads are at. Remy says, fuel is up in my area. Remy is in the Netherlands. He said, there's not much flour in the stores and car repair parts are being sent to Ukraine. Car repair parts are being sent to Ukraine because that makes the most sense, right? Let's send the car parts we have into a country that is war-torn and being run by a bunch of freaking Nazis. Unbelievable. I mean, I don't think anyone can deny what is going on is SHTF. We got Mr. Skylight checking in. And this gentleman here, folks, does a ton behind the scenes. I want to thank you, Mr. Skylight, for all you do. And he says, quote, "A full belly is little worth where the mind is starved." That is a quote from the great philosopher Mark Twain. Mark Twain, that was his pen name. His real name was Samuel Clemens. Quite an interesting gentleman, a satirist. And I think Mr. Skylight knew that, putting that up there. Yeah, Mark Twain was a smartass in the 1800s. He wrote some incredible stuff, more than just Huck Finn, which is now on the woke destroy it list. But he wrote a lot more than just Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures of. He wrote a lot of stuff, did poetry, was a great traveler. I grew up just north of the town where his famous frog jumping stuff was. Samuel Clemens, brilliant philosopher, said, "A full belly is little worth where the mind is starved." In other words, if you don't know what the hell's going on, right, having a full belly, what good's that going to do? You're gonna end up dead. Right? If your mind is starved, you're as good as dead. You're going to walk into a bear cave. You're going to step off a cliff. You're going to you're stupid. Your mind's starved. You're an idiot. Right? You're subject to the folly that others will place in front of you. Thank you again for the excellent $49.99 super chat donation. Thank you again, Mr. Skylight. Thank you for. And folks, you don't understand. There's so many of you that are behind the scenes working right now. We have an incredible, incredible network. Mr. Skylight is just one of them. Now, you want to talk about a network that isn't working? Southwest Airlines, folks. Well, they sent out an apology. You see, we're bringing you information. We're bringing you philosophical perspective. Southwest Airlines and other corporations are apologizing because they're not doing their jobs right. That's right, Southwest, because thousands of flights are canceled or delayed, they just thought that they would apologize, right? Yeah, that does a lot of good, doesn't it? Doesn't that make you feel great, warm and fuzzy? They're just going to apologize. Oh, I guess that fixes everything, right? Okay, where do we go? Where do we go next? Where do we go next? I've got this incredible list. Again, this is Sunday Night Live, and if you do Super Chat, that takes precedent. You come before all the things I want to talk about. And I've got a lot of shit to talk about, but you guys do too. This is your chance to shine, and I'll make you famous. And it is Crazy Uncle with a $5 Super Chat donation. He says, "With everything happening on the other side of the pond, I hope everyone has seeds. Kind of hard to use your freedom seeds if you can't raise your arms." Well, there's a lot of double talk in here, Crazy Uncle. If you can't raise your arms, like, lift your arms because you got no energy, you're weak, you're tired, you're sick, right? If you've got no food, you've got no nourishment. If you've got no nourishment and food, you have no energy, no strength, no durability. But also raising your arms, right? The right to keep and bear arms. And it's got a little subtle play on words, but I caught you there, Crazy Uncle. You can't raise your arms, which, Second Amendment tool. It fires your freedom seeds. So, yeah, we've got everything going on over there. But I think they're setting us up over here. They're setting us up over here for something. So, I hope everyone has, regular seeds. If you go to thepreparedmind.club, there's My Patriot Supply. They sell heirloom seeds. We also strongly recommend the sprouts. You can grow a freaking sprout salad, folks. Radish sprouts, alfalfa sprouts, all kinds of different sprouts out there. You can grow a salad in 4 days. Salad for 2 every 4 days. Good stuff. There's Sprouting Seeds by Sprout Man. And if you can copy that link, copy that right down here. Copy that address and put it. It'll take you right there. Okay, the other thing is, of course, go to thepreparedmind.club and search there for all the things you need. Great stuff. I want to jump back over there across the pond because I thought this is really important. Because I have gotten some people that go, "John, I think you're a little rough on President Zelensky. I think you're a little bit rough." Well, he said it's a crime to support Russia. It should be a crime, literally a crime, where you get arrested, thrown in jail, prosecuted, given prison time, fined, take all your property. A crime. It should be a crime to say what Putin is doing is okay. Now, be that as it may, Zelensky says that from Ukraine. But in Germany, I was talking with Chris B. Bacon. He said, hey, guess what? There are German people protesting in the streets in support of Putin. In other words, people aren't buying the shit, folks. I keep criticizing Zelensky, not because he's a Fruit Loop who wears very comfortable shoes and probably wears skinny jeans and makes extra money working at the bus station, providing services to weary passengers. If we're supposed to believe that he really cares about his people, then why isn't he surrendering? Because NATO, the United States, and no one else is going to invade Ukraine to fight Russia. Nobody is going to invade Russia to fight Russia. Now, I mean, that could change in a few weeks and we'll see. But for right now, it looks like everyone's afraid to even begin to mess with Russia. Otherwise, they would be there already. So Ukraine really is standing there all alone, begging for help from everybody. And I know that military folks, I know that government, they won't enter in any action, any military action without months and months of planning. And if they can, specialized training so that they can have supply lines ready, troops ready, all the facts and figures prepared to show that they can win. You don't engage in military action unless you know you're going to win, right? Otherwise, it's just an act of pure desperation that you're throwing human flesh at, cannon fodder. So Ukraine is supposed to be surrendering nicely, bargaining with Russia, if you will. Well, they have just now announced over the weekend, like a bunch of idiots, they've announced $1 million reward for every Russian helicopter, fighter jet, or warship that is attacked and successfully either taken out or destroyed. So we're supposed to believe that Ukraine wants peace. We'll work with Russia to develop a peace accord, and that Ukraine can be trusted to uphold its end of any agreement it signs onto. How is that believable, right? If they're also saying, blow up Russian shit and we'll give you $1 million. Number one, we're supposed to, as Americans and citizens of the world, be sending cash over to Ukraine to support the starving children and ladies. But they're going to give $1 million to, am I or you or any normal citizen going to take down a helicopter, fighter jet, warship, tank? With what? Frickin' rocks? The regular people don't have rocket launchers and missile guidance systems. So who is this $1 million reward going to go to if it were to be accomplished? Right? And once again, it's like a hollow threat, but it also shows, right, that Zelensky is a snake in the grass, a liar. He's a sex toy of the globalists and evil oligarchs of Ukraine and NATO. He's just a clown. It's fake bravado and fake bullshit. Number one, do they have the money? Where'd they get it? Number two, why aren't they giving it to the women and children? Instead, going to give it to someone who actually has missiles and rockets, right? Don't expect Ukraine to end, folks, anytime soon, because they need this to continue. They need to spice it up, right? In fact, I recall back to the very first super chat commenter, Darcy, when she said, the agenda line, their BS story is kind of threadbare. It's lost a lot of its oomph, its muscle, right? So don't expect this to end. They'll keep throwing shit out there and throwing shit at the wall, trying to convince us this is real, right? Well, it's gonna appear that way until Zelensky is killed or replaced by a newly elected non-elitist president. We're going to be treated to more of this kind of ridiculous behavior, unreliable. It's more than unreliable. It's incredible. It's counterintuitive. It is self-canceling because they're contradicting themselves constantly. So Crazy Uncle is back and he says, don't forget the last time the farmlands of Ukraine were mismanaged. 16% of the world's wheat and barley is from there. It caused the Holodomor. The Holodomor was back in the 1930s. And Stalin, the Russian communist socialist leader, caused the Holodomor. It's kind of like Holocaust, right? The Holocaust. Holodomor. The farmlands were mismanaged. The communist government took, right? The socialist government of Russia took from the Ukraine to feed its own people and caused massive, massive starvation throughout the region because it was mismanaged. Now, farmlands of Ukraine, 16% of the world's wheat and barley is created. That's the breadbasket, literally, of Europe. Who is managing it now? Zelensky. Is Zelensky an economist? Is Zelensky a career politician? Is Zelensky a flaming puppet of an actor who was placed in power through a military coup by a Ukraine oligarch, billionaire, who wanted to control Ukraine's energy resources? Yes, exactly. Precisely, that's who he is and what he's done. And is he mismanaging things? Well, he wants to stay in power, and he wants his masters, that is, Zelensky wants his masters to be pleased with him. He wants to serve them and pay them back, right? And he's not going to give up. So who pays in Ukraine? See, you and I will pay in the United States. Remy will pay in the Netherlands. Vincent will pay in Ireland. We've got people on this network watching live right now, and we're over 700 people live right now. People on 6 out of the 7 continents and many islands in the Pacific. And we're going to pay for the mismanagement of everything by our own country, our own governments, local, state, federal, etc. I'm going to give you a little idea of why this is happening. And it can be summed up very quickly. Thank you again, Crazy Uncle, for your great support of this channel, asking excellent satirical and uniquely pointed questions. But I'm going to give it to you why governments are doing this. How is it that they mismanage? Hillary Clinton, folks, says she doesn't understand why Joe Biden's poll numbers are so low. She doesn't understand that. Well, she doesn't understand things that are non-evil, folks. She doesn't understand competence. She doesn't understand how things actually work. That's why she doesn't understand. And it is people like Hillary and Obama and Biden. It is people like their masters that they serve, the Rothschilds. That's right, folks. It's not just a cute word to throw out there, Rothschilds. Evelyn Rothschild is Hillary Clinton's sponsor, puts up the money, protects Hillary. They understand that you have to grow food. They just don't care when they screw it up. Right? They figure when they're in control and they're in charge, they'll make sure everything's taken care of. But right now, they don't give a shit. And they'll screw everything they can up. They'll screw up the world's breadbasket, or one of the major ones, Ukraine, a huge agricultural nation, folks. They'll screw it up because they know that they'll always be able to eat these rich people, these powerful people. They don't give a shit. So are you prepared for food shortages, massive inflation? Are you prepared for social unrest? We're already seeing and experiencing that, folks, in Sri Lanka, in the Middle East. Oh, I've got stories on that, folks. Stories on that. Where is it? I'll give it to you. There's so many news. I've literally got dozens here. I'm just scrolling down through, folks. You can't find it. There's too many. Huge inflation. Now, Hillary doesn't understand why Biden isn't popular. It's because of the inflation, the ruined economy, lost jobs, destroyed lives, mask lockdowns, the lies, just like in the disclaimer at the beginning where the guy's fruit, vegetable, fake, and she screams at Biden, liar, right? Now, Russia, or I should say the Russian people, were actually taken aback, surprised that Putin pulled the lever and started this Ukraine invasion. At first, they were disturbed by it, according to the polling data, but now they are behind Putin's invasion. Polls released this week from inside Russia, from an independent pollster, a respected pollster called Levada. It showed that Putin's approval rating hits 83%, folks. 83%. It was 69% in January, still incredibly high. Biden's hasn't been above 50% his entire presidency, and it's been going downhill since he took office and started killing jobs day one, destroying our energy independence day one, making Americans question what the hell happened on day one. Putin's numbers, folks, 83%. In my lifetime, I can never think of any president, including Ronald Reagan, having an 83% approval rating, right? 81% said they supported the war, describing the need to protect Russia, right, as its primary justification. That is why the people of Russia support Putin and his efforts, 83 and 81% respectively. What are Biden's poll numbers looking like? Do people believe Biden's doing a good job? Are they better off now with Biden than they were before Biden? Right? Before Biden? A lot of questions we need to be asking, folks. Right? A lot of questions that we need to be asking. We've got Damian English checking in. He says, been focused on my preps. And thank you for the great $10 super chat donation. If you want your question read on the air, folks, make a super chat donation. It puts a color box around it. Jolene can pick it out, put it on the screen for me. Damian English has been focused on my preps. Had a 5-hour range training day yesterday. That is superb. He says, Biden pushing $1.3 billion in the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. $1.3 billion in alcohol, tobacco, and firearms bureaucracy training funding. The new bird flu, of course, popped up a month ago. And Damien says, let's do the stuff, not just talk about the stuff. Train. I totally agree. Right? When we gather for our daily talks here, our daily information digestion, that's a form of training the mind. But we do need to physically train. Cardiovascular training, weightlifting, walking. Folks, walking is actually one of the best forms of exercise you can do. Physically training with our Second Amendment tools. You have to get in the trigger time, folks. You have to put rounds down range. Even if it's only a magazine every week or every other week. Magazine meaning, 7 rounds, 12 rounds, 15 rounds. I don't know what magazines you have. I have 1911 magazines, right? They hold 7 rounds. But that's just it. We need training because we see where this is leading us. Thank you very much, Damien. As far as your other thoughts around the country, man, would love to hear them. There's a lot of people here, folks, that travel around the country quite a bit, either as a matter of employment or as a hobby or just on their vacations. They travel a bit and report back to us. Thank you again. We got Sean Penrod checking in with a $20 super chat donation. And he says, I have my food, water, medical, shelter, and my self-defense. But due to a medical condition, my abilities to do my property, What do you suggest? Sean, I need the question to be a little more defined. I had my food, water, medical shelter, and my self-defense, but due to a medical condition, my abilities to do my property, what do you suggest? Yeah, if we get some question clarification on that, that would be terrific. And I'll switch over to Red Pill Files with a 556 super chat donation. He says, how about Klaus Schwab's lead advisor, Yuval Harari, saying, quote, what do we need humans for? Yeah, that's depopulation admission. They have a depopulation agenda, folks. And they ask the question, what do we need humans for? See, we're a human resource to these people. In other words, if we're not serving them and we're not increasing their wealth, then what are we? They've referred to us in the past as useless eaters, right? Deplorable. They don't need us. They have industrialized agricultural production, enough to keep the elites themselves alive. They don't care about us. All we do is breathe air, eat food. And most of all, we represent a risk to these people. Now that they own just about everything, they don't need us anymore. They used us, the people, to work, toil, slave, right, for a paycheck while they became enormously wealthy. And now they don't need us anymore. Why, right? It is a depopulation agenda from the late 1800s, folks, way back in the 19th century, and then the 20th century. Now we're in the 21st century, well over 130 years, folks, 140 years, 150. There's been a segment of the population, elitist, egghead, erudite asswipes, super rich people who think that we don't need to exist, that we should just die and go away, that the earth shouldn't have to sustain all of us. They decided for themselves, right, who should be living. All right, when we get Sean Penrod's thing, we'll get back to it. But for now, we're going to get into Crazy Uncle with a $5 super chat donation. And he says, prepper tip, time to switch your winter kits to your summer kits. Make sure you lay out PMCS and refit. You don't need it to fail when you need it. And this is a trick. It depends on your climate. Once again, food, water, shelter, clothing, right? Clothing is your gear, right? Your footwear, your outerwear, your clothing, your gear for dealing with emergencies, right? The trick is in spring and then late fall is you can be hot during the day and literally frozen at night. So I think that the amount of gear you need to carry is actually increased. It actually is increased. It's harder in the early and mid-spring to deal with things because weather can change. We can get one of these bomb cyclones or polar vortexes come down if you're in North America, up north, or Europe, and you can get frozen out in one day. It's really tricky. But yeah, keeping up with what gear is needed and what isn't. And sometimes it can change from day to day or week to week. Right? I am down in the South, folks, where a cold day is down in the 50s. And I like that. I've been cold long enough. I've almost been killed. I've almost been killed by the cold many times. So I'll pass, right? I'll pass on that. So we've got Eli Patterson checked in with a terrific $20 super chat donation via PayPal. And he said, talk a little bit about stores of value and wealth, because stores of food and energy don't lose value like currency. Is a cooler planet a good thing? It seems to me higher food cost and more energy usage and higher energy prices aren't a good thing. It never goes good for humans when the planet cools off. Screw the green agenda. Green agenda is anti-human. I tell you what, if there's an anti-human agenda, and Eli Patterson's comment, super chat donation ties in with the part about your kit being ready, right, for any emergency, and the human depopulation agenda that's out there. They want the planet to cool, right? They want to put that screen up there. They want to reflect the sun's radiation because it's heating the planet's crust too much. Well, warm is good, right? Carbon is a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide. Now, plants eat carbon. They scrub it out of the air, right? Carbon dioxide is food for plants. But we want to reduce that. So that means less food, right? Less plant food. Right? Plants need a lot more than just a little bit of sunlight and a little bit of water. They need a lot of other elements. So yeah, we have a cooler planet, which doesn't promote the growing of agricultural products. And we have a cooler planet, right, with less carbon on it. So there's less food, less available, lower yields if the planet is too cold, a cooling planet. Yeah. Is it? And so again, Eli asks, is a cooler planet a good thing? And he says, it seems to me that less food, higher food cost, and using more energy to warm our homes, and there's an energy shortage. So we have cooler weather, or at least they're trying to make cooler weather. It's going to cost us more of our income. We're going to have to pay more of what we earn, right, for more expensive food and more expensive energy. Who does that benefit? Who does that benefit? So storing your wealth, right? Food is a great way to store your wealth. And energy, how can you store energy? Right? You can create energy with solar panels, and you can store it in batteries and use it. Right. And again, I'm going to need to get some solar products and demonstrate them here and bring them on. I'm going to have to do that in the next month here as we get into the hotter, sunnier summer months. But yeah, we can really do a lot to help ourselves prepare. I really believe that solar panels on an individual basis are a very good thing. Okay, we've got Sean Penrod back with the question, defend my property. Because of his medical condition, how is he going to defend his property? That is a tricky one, Sean, and it's one that we're all going to have to deal with. And it's not just, I'm not saying I'm crippled, but imagine if you're a healthy person, you're not that old, you think you'll be able to defend yourself. What happens if you step on a nail? If you catch a very bad cold, you get an infection, or how about just a mechanical injury, like a sprained ankle, a sprained wrist, right? You don't realize, or at least we typically don't think about it, because I don't think about it until it happens. When my knee is bothering me, or my ankle is bothering me, or my wrist or my hand hurts. It's like, how am I going to, right, accurately put a round down range? How am I going to run from here to there in order to defend myself? As I've gotten older, I am less inclined to believe that the lone wolf approach to being prepared is the best idea. And we talked about it even back when I was, 10 years ago, right? 10 years younger. The idea of, you don't have to worry about anyone else because you only rely on yourself. You have all your preps. So, the world can screw off and you're going to survive on your own. That really becomes quite tricky. And we discussed this back then. Even if you're a superb self-defense machine and prepper machine, it just takes one injury and you're in trouble. And I've known a lot of people that have just twisted their back wrong, sitting on the edge of the couch, lifting up a box, and you can't even get up, walk around, or sit on the toilet without needing someone else's assistance. So this really comes down to the question of, Mr. Penrod, who is in your group? Do you have a group? Can you count on them? Now, and again, even as an injured person, you are useful, beneficial. You can serve a purpose. All right. So say you're not really physical. You can't run around and defend yourself. Can you sit in an observation post or a listening post and stand watch? And if something bad is coming, right, a group of miscreants, right, a group of troublemakers, you can sound the alarm, and others who are sleeping and getting rest can come to attention, come to alert, and stand the post and repel the enemy. See, self-defense, there's many jobs having to do with it. Right? Many different ways to have self-defense. And one of them is just standing guard. Right? Able-bodied people should do more physically, and people who are, shall we say, physically challenged, physically impaired because of an injury or other medical conditions, right? It's about what can you do in an emergency situation that best benefits yourself and others, right? How can I be most useful in an emergency situation? Because that's really what we're talking about. While everything's fine, right? There's no one outside the shop here shooting anyone. So it's fine. There's no emergency, nothing to worry about. Actually, there's always, being prepared. Like just a few feet away is very nice. Actually, there's a lot more protection around me than you could guess. It's always close at hand. But, you don't always have to have it in your hand. Now, hearkening back to a couple other super chats a few minutes ago, we should be training all the time now. Training with it, safety, accuracy, right? Being good with our self-defense tools. And then finding what is it you can do in self-defense. And if you can't do it all, right, then you need to really work on your neighbors, your family, whoever it is that's going to be part of your group. And I think it's going to become a much easier question to ask or answer. The question being, where am I going to find people for SHTF when it gets Mad Max style? I think that question is going to come much easier, the answers. You're going to find out who are the good people and who aren't, right? Who in your neighborhood, who in your immediate world wants to join you, not just to eat your food, right, but to survive whatever is coming. I mean, literally, folks, social unrest in the Middle East, in Sri Lanka, in many countries. Germany is going to see food costs going up 20 to 50% overnight, meaning when they wake up tomorrow morning, and they'll wake up several hours before we do over here, they're going to find out what the hell just happened. Energy costs, fuel, doubling in the last year. It has just started. And Biden is going to do all this strategic energy reserves. Okay, strategic energy. When those energy reserves are gone, when those energy reserves have been drained, what then, Monsieur Biden? All right, we got Shelly Chavers with a $10 super chat donation. She says, my husband and I have a friend in Iowa who has over 100 acres and has been paid not to plant it by the government. What do you think, John? Well, you see, what the government claims they're doing is ensuring that food prices are high enough that farmers don't go broke, right? It's farm subsidies is what they used to call this. So I think that if they pay someone in Iowa not to farm corn or wheat, tomatoes, pigs, whatever it is they farm, they pay them not to farm, then I should also be paid not to farm. Because I could go out, I could find some rich person, get a loan, buy 100 acres and start farming. Is the government going to start paying me? It's very frustrating because we've had the government now in the form of the president himself say there will be food shortages. We've already seen food prices here in America go up significantly. And I'm not talking about the admitted inflation rate, which does not include food. It doesn't include food. No, it does not. Right? The government numbers don't include the cost to eat, to feed a family. So we know that those numbers are probably a lot higher. They want to keep that so-called CPI, the consumer pricing index, consumer product index, down as low as possible. They don't want to scare everybody with the real inflation. So I think it's disingenuous. It's dangerous of the government to pay people not to grow food, especially at a time when then the same jackass in the White House is literally allowing, you may as well be inviting personally, 250,000 people a month coming in the southern border, about to double to up to 500,000 people crossing the border into our country illegally, not being stopped by the government every single month. What food are they going to eat? They're going to eat from the same national pantry that you and I have. What do you think that's going to do to food prices, food availability? You tell me they're coming here because they're starving down there? Oh, you bet. They're starving down there because their governments are inept and corrupt and incompetent also. So let's spread the wealth, right? It just seems equitable. It's only fair if America, the United States of America, suffers along with the rest of the world, right? And that's what they talk about, is it not? That is precisely what the government says, right? They want this. It needs to be fair. We need social equity. We need economic equity. We need wealth equity. It's all about, that's just communist crap for us little people. Don't worry. In a globalist, corporatist environment, there is a huge distinction between us, the regular people, and the elite government and elite corporations at the top. The super powerful folks, the 1%, always get to keep their money and their power, and they do not have the same rules that we do. We are, by the way, over 750 people live at any one time. The President of the United States, he can't get more than 300 or 400 live for 5 minutes. We're at 750 people live, 750 people or more live, and we're almost at 90 minutes, an hour and a half. The President of the United States can't stay live for 9 minutes without losing his mind. We got Christine Bihana with a 557 super chat donation. And she says, appreciate you. Keep up the excellent work. God bless. Thank you, Christine. And thank you, everybody. Yeah, it's important, folks, that we keep working hard at this. No one ever said SHTF was going to be easy. No one ever said after you get food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, it's going to stay easy. Nobody said that. Nobody promised it. Not me. I always said, this is going to be extremely difficult. It's going to suck. It's going to wear people down. It's going to make people sick. Terrible stuff. We got Carlos Granados, our good buddy from south of the border, checking in with 191.1 Mexican pesos. And he says, hey, John, if us tequilas had a lot of vodkas and chop sueys camping here, you bet Jack Daniels would pay us a visit to distill them out. And what about the little guy's laptop? Carlos has got a fantastic, satirical, smartastic sense of humor. So let's start with this. If us Mexicans had a lot of Russians and Chinese camping here in Mexico, you bet Jack Daniels, that would be the United States, would pay us a visit to distill them out. Right. In other words, the United States doesn't want anyone on their border, military hardware, army, military, right? But we're supposed to think it's cool for Putin. Putin should be cool with us camping our military and all of Europe's military right there in Ukraine. No, he's not cool with it, folks. And then Carlos asks about the little guy's laptop. Well, who is the little guy? Well, it's the son of the big guy. The big guy in laptop discussions is Joe Biden. Now, they're trying to change the story. I don't know if you've caught this, but the discussion revolving around Hunter Biden, what should the Department of Justice do? And they're going after him on tax evasion. Right, like Al Capone, right, the mafia boss from Chicago in the 1920s. Al Capone, they got him on tax evasion. It's like, what? This guy was the mafia boss. He was breaking all kinds of laws, gambling, drinking, prostitution, right? Today, they'd call that human trafficking. They're trying to change the narrative from Hunter Biden laptop about sex, drugs, and his dad doing business deals and getting his cut. The big guy gets a 10% cut of all the business deals that Hunter was putting together with China, Russia, and Ukraine. They're trying to steer us away from that over to Hunter didn't pay his taxes. That naughty Hunter. They're trying to, they want it to go away. They want people to be bored with it, right? It was always there, and they didn't want it to become a campaign issue in 2022. It should have been a campaign issue in 2020. But the New York Times, the mainstream media, ABC, CNN, all these news agencies, right, the mainstream media lied. They said, no, that's misinformation. It's Russian misinformation. It's not true. There is no Hunter Biden laptop. And then they just recently come out and admitted, yeah, there's a Hunter Biden laptop and the information on it is verified to be real information. It's not made up. He really did say this shit about giving the big guy, that would be Joe Biden, 10%. It is a huge scandal, folks. Off the charts scandal. So, need to scare that. Need to hide that away. Thank you, Carlos, for the great topic, by the way. We need to pay attention and go after Hunter because he didn't pay his fair share of taxes. I'm sure Hunter could do 3 to 5 years in a minimum security federal, shall we call it, country club, right? Prison. I'm sure he could do that. He probably wouldn't even realize he's there. They could keep him whacked out on cocaine and crack. They could have conjugal visits from strippers and hookers, and he'd be just fine. He wouldn't even know where he's at. And that'd be a small price to pay. I mean, would you do, folks, if the government said, look, we're going to give you $50 million. All you have to do is go to a minimum security, basically country club and hotel for 3 years and live there. I think everyone would go, you know what? I'll take the 50 million and just hang out. I'll read books, exercise, learn how to golf, play tennis, maybe do some crafts and arts, learn to stamp some license plates or whatever for 5 years. That's right. That's not much different than what we're doing now, going into some 9-to-5 job and making jack shit for wages. Right? May as well get $50 million. I mean, Hunter Biden is not going to lose this deal, folks. And once again, I doubt he's even going to recognize where he's at. Guy looks like he is completely pasted out of his mind, like he's just been snowed to the T. All righty. Oh, holy cow. We're at an hour and a half, and we've got Cougar in with a $5 super chat donation. And says, writes, hide food, folks, from your local officials. Hide your food from your local officials. Their so-called greater good. Hiding in plain sight has never been more important. I think this is something we, once again, need to discuss. It's a great topic. You're a member of a community. The community, neighbors, the town, your coworkers, they probably have an idea you're a patriot and that you're a prepper and that you probably have a bunch of food. And in the event there's a shortage, supply interruption, as we've been describing it, then that's how they'll talk about it. There's a supply interruption in the northwest of the country, up in Washington State. They won't say, yeah, people are not getting food. They're getting hungry, they're pissed off, and they're fighting each other. They're going to call it a supply interruption. Well, it's an infrastructure issue. We're having some distribution network failures, but we'll get them resolved. So locally, folks, people are going to take it upon themselves to go door to door and, hey, what amount of food do you have? We need to write this down in case something happens. Heaven forbid, there's not enough food to go around. We need to know who has a little more and who has a little less so we can plan. You know how the government always plans? And then the next day they'll come around and go, okay, it said you have 12 cans of soup, 3 jars of peanut butter, hand it over. And when we think you need some, we'll give you a little of your own food. Folks, it is incredible how quickly people who are ill-prepared become communists. They're like, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that, but good thing we can rely on all of our neighbors to help us out, whether they like it or not. And it's true, folks. That is how they think. If you want to use the word think to describe their lack of intellectual capacity, if you will. Anyways, another great super chat, another great question. Thank you very much, Cougar. It is. Protect your food. Hide your food. Don't talk about your food. Unless you know the people you're working with and dealing with now are very trustworthy individuals. Now, I don't, and it really gets to me, I don't think that everyone realizes how much of a threat people we know, including our own families, are going to be. We got T96 with a $2 super chat donation. He says, Pope is man behind the curtain, Bible and great controversy. Now, I'm glad you brought up El Popo. And by Popo, I don't mean the police, not that Popo, but rather the Pope. The Pope is visiting up in Europe. And the Pope has now said that Russia is very bad. Folks, this is the same Pope that says, take your Jim Jones juice. This is the same Pope who has more in common with Nancy Pelosi than he does with you and I. I'm not a big fan of this particular Pope. Not at all. No. I don't like this Pope at all. Man behind the curtain, it's far more believable that he's not a good guy. I don't trust any of these elitist leaders. Now, Cardinal Vignani, if I remembered his name properly there, who's been outspoken against the atrocities committed by government, who's been outspoken against the World Economic Forum and communism. I like what he has to say. My slights and, shall we say, criticisms of the Pope is not a criticism of Catholicism. It is a criticism of the Pope himself. And if you were to read books written by Malachi Martin, Father Malachi Martin, a former and now passed away Jesuit priest, not only did he do some very scary stuff with exorcisms, but he also talked about the communists within Jesuit priesthood and Catholicism, and also the Vatican itself, how communist it is, how basically evil it is, that Catholicism is being run by a bunch of nasty people. But it shouldn't come as a surprise to us, I wouldn't think. If you look at the very country, America, our country, folks, most of the Prepared Mind people are right here in America. Our country founded on the concept that government is corrupt, that its leaders are tyrants and despots, and that they should be heavily restrained and shackled by strong rules that cannot be absolved or dissolved or removed, either at all or easily. Right? If you want to make changes, it's very difficult. That's what a constitutional republic is about. Restricting government, making government a very, shall we say, subdued servant of the people. But look at our country. Even with all that in place, they've run over the top of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, the Seventh, the Eighth. Well, shit, all of them. Right? The third about quartering soldiers in times of peace in people's houses. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried that one next. Might as well. Shit. I'm sure the government will discover just how beneficial it is to have police and troops living in your house. Well, the King of England found it very beneficial to demand that you house, which means house, feed, bathe his troops. Another form of taxation and control, folks. Yeah, these people, they're running down and ruining the great faith of the world. And here in America, it's my belief that the church of apostasy is here. And I don't want to have a huge religious discussion. I just wanted to say I don't have any more respect for the common church than I do for the common government. There are good exceptions, of course, but there are many, many, many evil ones, and they are serving the woke agenda just as readily as any corporation or any government. Right? There's so many churches I've heard that are just absolutely horrible. I hope you belong to a good one if you belong to any at all. We have so much trouble, folks. Where do we go next? If you guys got a super chat, we'll discuss that. And we do. It's Crazy Uncle. He's back with a $5 super chat donation. He says, it's spring, sun's out, guns out, time to train. I'm right there with you, man. As it gets warmer, I get a little itch, right? I get a little bit more spring in my step, literally during spring. And I want to get out there and put some rounds down range, start doing some training. I did that, a little bit of training this weekend. I did some educational stuff. Last weekend, I went out in the bayou and the swampage and got some physical training, got to know the terrain. It's really important. Train, right? And if you aren't really good with your firearms, seek training from an experienced professional. You may have 1,000 rounds of ammunition, but you don't want to use 1,000 rounds of ammunition to get the job done when you only need to use, say, 50. Right? So learning shooting discipline so that in the event you have to use your weapon, you aren't just blowing away your ammunition pointlessly. It's incredible, folks. There's a lot of different ways that ammunition can be used. It can be used to stop a threat. It can be used to deter a threat. It can be used to deter a concern that won't become a threat because you exercised your rights properly. Unbelievable. We have so many areas of collapse coming. We got Heidi checking in. She says, John, I heard that California is considering a bill that would legalize abortion up to a year after a child is born. How can that be legal? I've heard it's a few weeks, up to a year. This is, I think, Heidi, a question that the United States Supreme Court, we all understand it, but it needs to be enshrined in a law. The U.S. Congress, the U.S. Senate need to say, when does life start? Does life start at birth? Well, that is the first time we can look at and see with our own eyes a living being at birth. Now, no child can live on their own until they're at least at the age of 6 or 7 or 8, maybe 10 or 12, without the assistance of parents and other humans. So to say, well, if it can't live on its own, it's not a living being. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. All higher beings, more intelligent, more complex beings, require more, shall we say, training, education, help, and assistance in order to get to the point where they are self-sustaining and then productive. So this idea that, well, if you can't live on your own, you're not really alive, it's bullshit. So when we see a human born, newborn baby, to be born means to have life. That's when we all accept it. So this idea that after you're born, you can be killed or allowed to die, well, there's neglect, right? And if someone dies because of your neglect, that's a crime. If you allow them to die intentionally, knowing they'll die, that's, as far as I'm concerned, premeditated murder. Right? As far as I'm concerned, right? Again, the intelligent mind wants to think about this topic. Well, what really happens in life? Now, if a baby is born, brought into this world, either through operation or delivery, a month early, 2 months early, 3 months early, that baby will live. It can live if given some special attention. So when does life begin? If it's not after 9 months, you have to go full 9 months before it's born and then it's alive. No, because babies can be born prematurely and they live. So when does life begin? Now, Texas very intelligently passed the heartbeat law, meaning when you get a heartbeat, you're alive. And from that point on, whether you're inside of somebody else living as a developing fetus is, you're a living being with a heartbeat. Right? If I were to kill a pregnant woman, I would be charged with 2 murders, or 2 homicides, if you will. One for the mother and one for the unborn baby. Now, again, they're going to use the word unborn. Well, if you're born, you're alive. And then they have that, well, you killed an unborn human. And so you're charged with murder or manslaughter or homicide. But if you intentionally kill someone and you're the mother, then that's fine. Right? So this heartbeat law really begs the question, if you will. It asks the question, what if the government passes a law on the national level and says life begins with a heartbeat? Well, the other way to look at that is, when does life end? Well, when someone's heart stops beating, blood doesn't circulate, the brain doesn't get fresh oxygen, it stops sending out electrical signals, the body stops moving, becomes inanimate. The brain is dead, the heart isn't beating, the lungs, right, the breathing apparatus, the diaphragm quits moving back and forth, bringing in oxygen, the heart quits pumping, and the brain dies. You are dead without a heartbeat. Literally, without a heartbeat, you die. Now, you can be resuscitated using extreme assistance and then mechanical assistance. It's possible. It's possible. But that doesn't guarantee, right? You can keep a person alive on machines. They're a vegetable, is the term used to describe them, right? Because the machine is doing the work of pumping the blood, breathing, et cetera, to keep the person alive. But that's all machine, right? Do we have to do that? Does it? A lot of times the body won't suspend it or sustain itself anyways. So there needs to be a law passed saying, when does life begin? Now, the Supreme Court, is that unconstitutional to pass that law, or is that constitutional? Right? What does the law say? What does the Constitution say about passing laws about life and death? Not a lot, right? So what can the Supreme Court say about this? Is this an overreach? Well, if you look at what government really is supposed to be about, it's about serving the people. How does a government serve people? Well, it protects us from enemies, foreign and domestic, right? Foreign over there. It preserves and protects us from enemies. So we have armies, our Army and Marine Corps, and Navy and Air Force for fighting the enemy abroad. And then domestically, we're supposed to have law enforcement, judges, right? Some bureaucratic assistance to protect ourselves domestically. The domestic tranquility, right? Peace, tranquility, the domestic life. That's what government's for, is protecting our lives and our peace and our prosperity. If the government says we're going to say life exists at the heartbeat, well, that's a statement the government can make so it can perform its function, not to determine, right, whether that's constitutional or unconstitutional, but rather, at what point does the government's protection become possible? When does the government start to act in the preservation and protection of individuals? When they have a heartbeat. It's just setting a time frame for where the government should start looking at a person and determining whether they're alive or not. It's completely constitutional, in my opinion. Now, would it be unconstitutional for the government with Nancy Pelosi to say life doesn't start until you're 5 years old, and therefore prior to 5 years old, the government can't protect you? Right? In other words, you can be killed. You can be killed, right? And that's what they're talking about. Is they're talking about, well, after you're born, well, for 1 month or 2 months or a year or whatever, you can be killed by your own parents. And it's not murder. It's not homicide. This is interesting, though, because the state, or the government, if you will, already looks to pregnant women and the unborn fetus and says, well, in the event of killing the one, you've killed two. So government has to decide, is its job really to protect us? You know, what is its job? Well, its job is to protect us. When does that protection begin? When you're alive. What determines life? It's all important questions, folks. Right now, there's a lot of people that believe the government doesn't think we have a right to life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness, that we don't have a right to prosperity and peace and justice, that we are useless eaters, deplorables, and that the population should be culled, reduced, because we're not necessary. After all, what purpose do humans serve? Unbelievable stuff. We're at an hour and 45 minutes. We like to go 2 hours every time, every Sunday night live at the zoo here. And you guys have put on a great show with me again with your super chat donations, your topics. We got another 15 minutes, but as long as there are super chat donations out there, I will sit here in this chair in front of you and we'll discuss what you want to talk about. We got Chris P. Bacon with a $5 super chat donation. He says, long time no see. Say hi to Uman for me while you were there. Well, I'll tell you what, Crispy Bacon is a brilliant man. I need to do an interview with him about economics. We have some incredible economics going on. And Chris, as far as I'm concerned, is an expert worthy of all of our attention. So Chris, I know you're listening now. We need to sit down and have a discussion about, well, money, precious metals, the economy, anything that's on your mind. Again, you're the expert, and I'd love to bring you on to the show and do an interview in the Monday through Friday zone. And it's probably because I haven't called you and said, hey, let's do that we haven't. So let's do that. And Uman, Chris says, hey. All right. I can't bring Uman on camera right now. He's busy in the bathroom or something. Anyways, when it comes to being smart, we can't rely on government anymore. So who do we rely on? Who are our experts? Do we rely on experts? Well, maybe we should look to those who have the most to lose and see what they have to think, right? Because they have the most to protect. Well, that's what you would think. Well, let's just say this. Let's look at this. In Germany, there's a chemical giant, kind of like in America, we have the Dow Chemical, right? Well, a chemical giant in Germany is warned of, quote, total collapse if the Russian gas supply is cut, right? Is this guy expert enough to be listened to? Nope, I guess not, right? The CEO of Germany's multinational BASF is the world's largest chemical producer. I'm sure you've heard of BASF. They used to actually put ads on TV. They warned that slowing down or cutting off energy imports from Russia would bring into doubt the continued existence of small and medium-sized energy companies, and further would likely spiral Germany into its most catastrophic economic crisis going back to the end of World War II. So do we listen to these? Well, you see, he's not saying you need to be less white. He's not saying you need to cut off your genitals in order to be accepted socially. When things get really bad, folks, it seems like all of a sudden corporations start worrying about their own asses and what it is they do. They start worrying about themselves. We all worry about ourselves when things get nasty. Well, when times are really good, we can talk about how it's great to be woke and less white, and we need social equity and blah, blah, blah. We need ESG, blah, blah, blah. Well, BASF, if it starts going out of business because of stupid management decisions or stupid political decisions, yeah, that can cause catastrophic economic consequences, which is why we need to talk to Crispy Bacon. Anyways, the economic crisis he was talking about is the end of World War II. I tell you what, how about instead of that, going back to the 1920s, after World War I, the Weimar Republic of Germany, that's what they called it, the Weimar Republic, it was economically crushed. Economically crushed. You cut off energy, folks, travel, and I'm not talking fun travel, I'm talking about going to work, distributing goods. The oil industry, folks, creates not only gas for your car, electricity for your home. You've heard the term petrochemical, right? BASF is the world's largest chemical producer. Where do the constituent parts of chemicals come from? Well, oil. Without oil, and specifically in this case, referring to Russian oil, right? They lose chemicals that are used for pharmaceuticals, paints. Pharmaceuticals mean medicines, all medicines, not just Jim Jones juice, but paint, everything that required plastics, Everything that requires anything other than metal, right? Metals come from the ground. Wood comes from forests. Food comes from fields. But anything synthetic, like for example, this radio, this Midland radio, without petroleum, without energy products, this radio wouldn't be possible. The plastics in it, like the circuitry that's created, there's metals in there, but there's also just tons of petroleum-based byproducts. And a company like BASF creates all that. And they're seeing that there's going to be a problem, folks. They're warning total collapse if they try and cut off Russia. Unbelievable. I mean, but this is what the leftists in Washington want you to worry about, right? We'll hate Putin, but hey, we really need, right? We really need our social program. We need social justice, right? So a transgender cyclist says that he feels demonized because he has been barred from a women's championship race because female competitors threatened to boycott if he was allowed in. I mean, she was allowed in. That's what we're supposed to focus on? That's what life is really about? Or is life about keeping the lights on, keeping the heat on, being able to travel, being able to go to work, being able to be productive, being able to plant, right? Petrochemicals, well, hell, they're used to heat up metals to create freedom seeds, right? Brass, cold blue steel, well, nitrocellulose, right? Gunpowder. To the common man, that's a petrochemical constituent that comes from oil. You bet. But we're supposed to worry about the feelings of a transgender cyclist who feels demonized because he's not allowed to play with all the other girls. I guess the Supreme Court needs to address what a girl is. Maybe they ought to take a couple of really hard biology classes, because that's what this Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court nominee, doesn't know what a woman is because she's not a biology expert. Well, she can't figure that one out. Probably wouldn't be a good idea to ask her, when does life begin? Because, well, is it really that hard to figure out, to ask some simple questions? Well, as explained, let's get away from, the really hard questions like, when I put my hand in my pants, what genitals do I feel to determine what my gender is? Let's get back to, if we shut off the gas to Germany, we're going to have total collapse. Well, Gazprom, which is Russia's energy giant, that's like their Exxon, their BP, their Shell. Gazprom has now halted gas shipments to Europe through its pipeline. So, folks, Mother Russia, it is controlling at this point now the world's energy needs. Without Mother Russia, the world goes dark. Yeah, there's other countries that supply oil and gas, but there's not enough to make it through the day. So what do? Say, everyone, turn off your lights from noon till 3 p.m. every day. And no driving from noon to 3 p.m. We're going to shut down the world half the time now because Russia is the bad guy. Right? Mother Russia controls the world's energy needs. Right? Now, so, when will the petulant children leaders, the childlike leaders of the European Union realize they can't cuss out their mother, then expect a dinner to be served to them, right? Mother Russia doesn't have to put up with rotten children, that are petulant, spoiled brats, or just flat out stupid, right? The European Union and the United States need to find new energy now, folks, so that they don't need Russia. I get that. That's their plan now. It's like, we're going to get off the Russian stuff. It's going to take years to get there, folks. Well, oh, wait a minute. Biden, you ever hear the Keystone Pipeline, right? When Trump was inaugurated, January of 2017, I made a Board of Truth video showing the Keystone Pipeline was key to the U.S.'s energy independence and our national energy security, protected from the east, the west, and the south, as this pipeline ran out of Canada down into America. Biden killed it day one, right? If Biden, the District of Columbia and District of Criminals, and the globalists wanted U.S. independence and security, they could fix our problems instantly. If Europe, folks, if Europe wanted independence and security and energy, they would fix this problem instantly. Well, you come up with a solution and it takes years to get there, right? So it almost seems that it's obvious that they want this total collapse to occur. They want us destroyed and dependent on the elites to give us breadcrumbs. And their great reset, folks, notions of global equity, which is communist fairness, and free trade, where, well, it's free for them, the corporations, but not for us. That is no sovereignty for nations. That's our protection here in the United States from the rest of the world, is our sovereign nation status. And the more independent we are, the more free and sovereign we can be. It's just incredible. I mean, again, the left, the political left, what have they done to our country? What have they done to our world? I lay so much at the feet of the mainstream media. What we do here, you and I, you come on here, you do super chat questions, right? You do a super chat donation, super chat question, so we can consider topics that are real. But we have this far, far, far left journalist. Her name is Taylor Lorenz. She is known as the tattletale journalist, right? At the Washington Post and the New York Times. She has made a career of screwing up people's lives who have different political views. She has ruined numerous people's lives, folks. It's incredible. So she did an interview where she broke down in tears and cried that she suffers severe PTSD because of mean tweets. If she thinks that, right? If she thinks that is hard, she's got some stuff coming, folks. She has a lot more coming, right? This horrid human being, right, suffers from severe PTSD because people tweeted about her, right? Hey, biatch there, right? Try having left-wing LGBT scum attack you and cancel you. Try having the government, schools, colleges, media, and corporations tell your kids to hate you, right? Can't take the pressure, right? Stop attacking others. This is just one tiny, 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 tiny piece of where we're at in this world, folks. It's incredible. Day after day, you and I are seeing what's happening. We have to be prepared for more. We have to have thicker skin. We have to stop being afraid of what other people think of us, what other people are saying about us. Period. Right? If I'm afraid of what everyone else says, well, everyone else says preppers are stupid. Preppers are paranoid. Prepping is unnecessary. Really. T96 checks in with a $5 super chat donation. And he says, USA started from escaping persecution. USA going back to it. The same people blindly follow are coming here as replacement. They want war with God. We are his image. People who originally came to America, I should say North America and the American colonies up here, not Central America, not Mexico. The original escapees were escaping religious persecution, the Pilgrims. So they made a deal with the British government. They made a deal with each other, the Mayflower Compact. And they said, we want to be free to practice our religion and to live as free as possible. So they took a chance and they went out on a limb, literally, right? People want to escape for a lot of reasons. Religious persecution, well, any government persecution, high taxes, regulatory controls. But now you can't escape and get away. So the people believe that, well, if you need to escape hardships in life, well, then you become wealthy. Or you move to where the wealth is. And you can become wealthy. And in that way, you can insulate yourself, protect yourself from abusive government, abusive religion. Now today, religious abusive dogma doesn't come from a church. It comes from colleges, mainstream media, and government itself. Because environmentalism is a religion. Critical race theory is a religion. Marxism is a religion. Racial Marxism is a religion. Socialism is a religion. It combines government power with, shall we say, less than straightforward philosophy, or corrupt philosophy, or flat out freaking lies. Well, because you have, I should have some of that. You're just really lucky that you got all that stuff over there. So you should share with everyone else. And we all get an equal share. Right? That's socialism, communism. It is a form of religion. If you participate, you're loved. If you agree and play by the rules that the religion creates, you're loved and you have salvation. And if you do not, then you're punished, right? And they give you hell. Hell to pay, folks. Hell to pay. Where do we go from here? We're at 2 hours, and Marilyn, Miss Marilyn checks in with a $20 super sticker, super chat donation. Thank you, Miss Marilyn. You're here every week, and it is much, 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 much appreciated. Folks, without you supporting this channel on Sunday Night Live at the Zoo and Patreon, we cannot exist. You make it happen. Pow! Such a good thing. Such a good thing, folks. We need to fight back and stand up for ourselves. And this is how we do it, by helping each other understand and then encouraging each other to prep to action. Get prepared and take action. We got Bonnie Blue 2A with a $9.99 super chat donation. And she says, how do people prepare for central bank digital currency reset that is likely coming? Oh my gosh, you asked this question after 2 hours of draining my brain? Well, I'll give it to you straight, Bonnie. There is a good answer here. Everyone pay attention. In order to switch from a paper cash currency, the system we have now, over to something that is barely tested, largely untried, never done before, a computerized debt management system using an invisible token that has no physical representation, the central bank digital currency, a CBDC, whether you call it Bitcoin or Ethereum, or whether you call it Fed coin from the Federal Reserve. How do they get from us having paper, a physical representation of wealth, to nothing more than a digital illusion of wealth? You have to crash one system and say it has failed. The United States using the Federal Reserve note, the dollar, has failed. We were hacked, cyber attacked, and we printed too much, but they won't ever admit they did too much of anything bad. And so we have to wash away those dollars. Everyone with a bank account, we, the government, will confiscate it. And we're going to assign to you a central bank digital currency token. So for every dollar you had in the bank, we're going to give you 25 cents of a central bank digital currency. See, that you would think, well, they'll give me $1 for every $1 I had before. We'll go from one US dollar or one Federal Reserve note to one central bank digital currency unit of exchange, a dollar, if you will. They'll call it something that's familiar to keep us happy, but it'll go from being a real representation of wealth to a digital representation of wealth. So you ask, question back up, please, because I want to quote this one absolutely perfectly, Jolene. You ask, how do people prepare for the central bank digital currency reset that is likely coming? Well, you don't give them any currency, that is to say, money in your bank account for them to freeze, confiscate, or hold and say, that is all failed. Sorry, that doesn't exist anymore. But we will give you something to replace it. So imagine your $1 could buy one potato or one apple or one banana. And then they come back with a central bank digital currency where your one currency, well, now it's only going to buy half a potato or half an apple. half a banana. So now you're 1-to-1, if you will. Imagine if they okay, you get one new currency for one old currency, but it only buys half as much. You've lost half your wealth. How do you prepare? After you buy all your food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, ammunition, you buy all that physical stuff. It's real. It is not a digital illusion. It is not a paper representation. It's stuff, right? It's SHTF stuff. It's real. You can eat the food, drink the water, wear the clothes, live in the house. If you've done all of that, if you've got all the stuff you need to be prepared, and you still have some cash, silver and gold, folks. Some people like platinum. Some people like copper. I mean, these are all useful metals. Some are more representative of money than others. Gold and silver primarily. And gold has always been the king's and merchants' money, and silver has always been the common man's money, right? So turning that wealth, right? In hard times, silver and gold always go up in value relative to the currency, which fails and loses value to inflation. At first, gold and silver will turn down, right? It starts becoming a little worth less as, oh my God, everyone's scared. And then it rockets up. People realize it has real value. It's actually money. It's not just a paper representation of money. Gold and silver is what our U.S. Constitution says money should be. A paper representation of a gold or silver coin, well, they made those. Now they want to get rid of paper altogether. They want to get rid of coins altogether and go to a digital thing. They want to just erase all your old paper money, folks. But if you own gold and you own silver and you owned copper, lead, brass, and cold blue steel, that's how you protect the silver and gold, by the way, is the other precious metals, right? Copper and lead. And I say cold blue steel, meaning the rifle or the handgun or the shotgun that it goes in. We're going to have some hard times, folks. We're going to have government coming after us. We're going to have corporations coming after us. We're going to have incredible scumbag groups like BLM and Antifa coming after you. You're going to have good people gone bad because they didn't prepare coming after you. The hungry hordes, the masses, will hunt preppers in places, right? But, Jolene put up SD bullion. If you would, there's a code there, right? There's a internet website right there, right? Pause the video in a second or back it up and just retype that entire thing, or go to thepreparedmind.club and look for SD bullion. And that's how you get your silver or your gold. And it's wealth preservation. It's not an investment, say. And you could treat it like one and sit on it for 20, 30, 40 years. And hey, in 20, 30, 40 years, it will be worth a lot more. Trust me. Like an investment. But it's also a way to preserve your wealth. You take it out of the banking system. You take it out of the industrial system, out of the mining system, out of all the systems. When you own it, you own it. It's yours. If you can hold it and you own it, it's yours. Now all you have to do is protect it, like everything else, including your own life. There's people like, well, I'm not going to get the gold and silver, because then who's going to protect it? Well, who's protecting your life now, jackass? Right? That's the question that I like to ask in response to the question, how do I protect it? The same way you would protect your wife or your children or yourself, or your business, or your property, or your crops, or your favorite kitty, cat, or dog. Right? You got to protect your shit. That's what the Second Amendment is about. Protection against people, against threats, against foreign threats, against domestic threats, against scumbags. It's all there, right there in writing, folks. History, right? Corporations have now declared war on us. That's right. You're too white. It doesn't matter if you're black, folks. You can still be too white. If you believe in law and order and our system, our way of life, our traditions, our culture, our laws, then even if you're black, meaning you have pigment in you, if you believe that in the American dream, then you're too white. See, white really isn't a color. It's a belief system. I don't think I've described it that way yet. Being white is a belief system, according to these leftists. And they're the same people that say, well, being whatever gender you want is a belief system, and you have to accept it. You have to accept my new belief system. Well, the belief system they have that they broadcast onto you or transfer onto you, right? That they put it on you is that you're white if you believe something they don't like. And so white is bad. It's no longer about race. It's about a belief system, right? They project all of their garbage on us. They are so up in the head. So now Disney is going to war with Florida. So Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, Republican, he's a U.S. congressman. He's now had said, hey, state legislators, right? I'll tell you how to trap this rodent, right? A rat, meaning Mickey Mouse. Repeal, folks, their special privileges. Right now, Disney made a deal a long time ago with Florida that they would govern themselves and manage their own affairs in Disneyland, right? So Matt Gaetz says, guess what? We'll just repeal your special privileges. We'll take away your self-governance and then make you subject to what the state of Florida says you must do and must not do in your facilities with your property. It's going to be quite a war, folks. We're in a people-to-people war, a people-to-corporation war, and people versus their own government. We're going to have partisan conflict on every level, in every stage, in every fashion. That is coming. We're seeing evidence of it now. It's not paranoia. It's not delusion. It's not lunacy, folks, for you to believe what you see with your own eyes. Right? It's coming. Back to money. There's a paradigm shift, folks, that the media, the mainstream media, hasn't yet grasped. The Russian ruble has been relaunched. When the U.S. sanctioned it, the ruble tanked, and then it's gone straight back up. It's linked, Russia has its currency to gold and commodities. What's a commodity? Food. Wheat is a commodity. Gold is a commodity. Silver is a commodity. Uranium is a commodity. Anything real is a commodity. You know, raw materials, food, commodity. They said, if you want our stuff in Russia, well, you give us gold or you buy our currency, which is based on, right, so many rubles, that's their dollars, so many rubles per this much gold or this much wheat or this much oil. They've strengthened their currency, folks, by switching to a gold standard or a commodity standard, basing their dollar on something real, basing their ruble on something real. What are we basing our currency on in the United States of America? Well, it was based on gold at one time. Then they stopped that and they based it on oil. And now they want to base it on absolutely nothing and have no physical representation, but rather only a digital representation. And they can tell you at any point, well, you're buying a little bit too much rice. You're buying so much ammunition. You're traveling in places we don't like you traveling so much. So we're going to stop allowing you to use your central bank digital currency, which you can't remove from the bank in the form of cash because no cash exists with a digital currency. Can you convert your digital currency into rice or into silver or into ammunition or into something useful? Yeah. And I bet that's exactly what people will do because they're going to want to have and hold what is theirs. We have a huge shift coming, folks. It's called the Great Reset. One way or another, we're going to get a reset. It's going to reset to good or it's going to reset to bad. Your participation, your understanding of what's going is going to help determine which path we take, which path we accept. Just because they hand us, just because they hand us or give us or tell us, you get the central bank digital currency or you're going to die. You don't have to accept that, folks. They don't like, they're going to call it a black market economy, or they're going to call it contraband. They're going to try all kinds of ways to guilt you, trick you, fool you. Well, rather all of us. And we don't have to accept their bullshit, right? Human beings existed for millennia, thousands of years, bartering, trading apples for potatoes, trading cheese for wool, trading amongst themselves. currency, or money rather, came about as something universal and universally accepted. But merchants determined what it was worth. Oh, you've got silver to trade? I'll take 2 ounces of silver for this cloth. Or I'll take 1 gram of gold, right, for a bushel of wheat, a bushel of rice, and 20 pounds of meat. Right? They could figure this stuff out, folks, all by themselves. We didn't need the government or Winn-Dixie or Piggly Wiggly or Safeway or Kroger or Publix or any store out there to tell us what things are worth. We could figure it out on our own. Now, that's harder. But folks, life is going to get really hard as shit hits the fan. If we're all finished up, we're at 2 hours and almost 20 minutes. And I want to thank you guys for making this a successful Sunday Night Live discussion about SHTF and all things. And believe it or not, I still have a lot to discuss. But I'm exhausted. And in less than 8 hours, it all starts again. Actually, it never stops. The world goes 24 hours a day. I'll give myself a couple hours rest and wake up before the sun comes up, and I'll be burrowing deep back into this SHTF stuff. And it's only possible because of you guys. The support you give us through Patreon, going to patreon.com and signing up for $2 a month. That supports us. It pays the bills. It keeps the lights on, keeps us eating delicious tuna fish and spam. And I don't say that just with sarcasm and facetiousness. I've got a handy little supply of spam, and I'm very glad to have it. We have to be prepared, folks. And I'm going to do everything I can to help make sure the information you get is satirical and also extremely valuable, because chance favors the prepared mind. Aren't you glad you're a prepper? No longer a bad thing, is it? Indeed, it is a good thing. Godspeed to you all. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping and being good, patriotic citizens of the whole world. Godspeed and Semper Fi.